Environmental engineers are experts that use science and math to manage waste and pollution. This is a video of my job shadow at XDD Environmental, where I got to spend the day seeing this branch of work in real life.
All right, in the office, so the interesting thing with this profession is it's a mix of office work and field work. So at our company, I'd probably say we're 80% office-based, and then we're 20% field-based. So 80% of that is in the office. So that depends really on the project you're working on. A lot of it can be proposal work, so if we're trying to bring in clients, they're engineering and design work, so we're designing systems to clean up whatever the problem is. It can be running the systems, so once we have a system up and running, a lot of it's kind of, we call O&M, it's operation and maintenance. So every day I might come in and do something different for a different project.
I guess there is no kind of typical lab day because there are different projects going on.
What creates our industry and what we're driven around are the regulations. So we have the EPA, which is the federal government, and then the state agencies, which within each state there's a regulatory body. So they set the standards that everybody in the country has to meet for drinking water, for surface water, for soils, sediments, any of these concentrations and contaminants. So these are the people that generally that drive the entire industry for what we do. And then, so underneath the regulators, you have the stakeholders. And the stakeholders are the people that have to answer to the EPA. So that would be like an industry. So stakeholders then, and this is where we come in, most of these people are not environmental engineers or scientists. So what they have to do is then hire a consultant, and that's where we come in. So these guys, they might manufacture cars or a chemical or a hunk of metal, and they don't know anything about soil and groundwater geology. So what they do is they hire people who do. And those are the consultants. And within the consultants then, below that, you have contractors. And within the contractors, that can be from anywhere. We also fall under a contracting role. This line gets a bit blurred based on what the individual consultant firm does. We either do quarterly or annual reporting to the agencies, and that's where they measure compliance. If we're out of compliance, then they'll come down and we'll have more conversations and things like that. But that's how they check up on those things.
Okay.
Through reporting. Just working hazards across whatever industry you work in. There's certain things that are required. Like a good example is if you're doing elevated work. If you're over 4 feet high, you have to have fall protection, like a harness on.
Definitely, you want to protect the eyes. There's some chemicals, acids and bases that you even want to put goggles on to have a full seal.
Within our specific projects that we deal, in addition to those, we develop site-specific health and safety plans called a HASP. And in those, we create our own, not regulations, but criteria that we have to do to follow. And those are based on job hazard analyses, we call it. It's a lot of acronyms, but we look at each hazard on the site. What's the hazard? What's the way to mitigate it? And what's the proper procedure to prevent, or at least to reduce the risk of injury? We also have to fall under a client might have their own plan that we have to abide by. So before we go on their site, they'll send us their plan, and we'll have to read that and sign off on it and operate under their rules and requirements. There are OSHA fines, right? So if I got hurt doing something unsafe and it was not, let's say I went and I did elevated work and I was not wearing a harness and I fell and got hurt. Mm-hmm. In addition to having just the liability issue of the workers' comp claim internally, OSHA would investigate that. We call them reportable incidents. If somebody gets hurt on the site, you do have to report it to OSHA. Best interest to work safely and not have reportable incidents.
Right.
What the client's expectations are. So there's a bunch of different ways that works. You have to meet the client expectations. You have to meet the budget that you set. You have to meet internal expectations. So if somebody tasks me with a project, I have to be able to get it to them within a reasonable amount of time, within the budget, within what somebody else would expect. and if I delegate that down to somebody else, I need to get it back. So, yeah, I guess there's a lot of expectations about the level and the quality of work you have, and it all has to meet, all these different, I guess, parameters and quality benchmarks. So an engineer is a 4-year engineering degree, and then you will be able to call yourself an engineer. To get on a site, you would need a 40-hour OSHA HAZWOPER certification. That's just for hazardous waste sites and hazardous waste handling. Not necessarily a requirement, but they're more for professional development or advancement. And that would be something like your EIT, your engineering and training, or your professional engineer certification, your professional geologist certification if you're a geologist. There's one, it's called a CHMM. It's basically Certified Hazardous Waste Managed, something, I forget the acronym. It makes you more marketable. It might have a little pay increase with it, just because it expands your capabilities and it provides you with a certain level of, I guess, it backs up some certifications to you that what you're bringing to the table. So those are all in-demand things for the industry. So from the technical standpoint, you have to have a very wide range of knowledge about what you're doing.
Common sense and just really thinking about what you're doing. And then as you're collecting data, just thinking about, okay, does it make sense? What does your result make sense?
Flexibility.
I think the other thing is just like a good kind of chemistry and mathematical background.
Right.
Do calculations and
just dealing with different personalities. So when we work on a project, we have, like I said, something like the regulatory body, like the EPA, that we have to deal with. We have our clients. We have just internal coworkers, colleagues that we have to deal with, and then we contract out a lot of work too. So we have subcontractors. And so from that, from the top tier down to the bottom, you have a huge range of personalities and different roles for those personalities. So you have to be able to deal with all of that and kind of keep everybody happy. It's kind of a big juggle, and you really have to understand people, and you have to understand your knowledge, what they're paying you for.
Thank you, XCD Environmental, Laurel Crawford and Joe Hickey, for explaining the day-to-day expectations and regulations of an environmental company.